There are men the world fears, and there are women who dare to challenge them. Brenda never imagined that crossing a dangerous border would put her face to face with Jeff, a feared man, ruthless, with a gaze as sharp as steel. But what she also didn't expect was to feel her heart race when he touched her. Between danger and desire, between buried secrets and forbidden kisses, she's about to discover that some cold men melt completely when they meet the right woman. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave your like and become a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, also click the super thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue bringing stories that move hearts. The air was thick, heavy with dust and the metallic smell of recent gunpowder. Brenda had crossed borders before, physically and professionally. But this time something was different. There was an invisible tension in the air, as if fate itself was whispering that she was about to face something that would change everything. She was an investigative reporter for Horizon News, one of the country's most respected networks. Her job was to dig up truths buried under layers of lies, corruption, and danger. And that night, this truth had led her to the heart of a foreign war zone, where smuggling and murder were as common as the sunrise. The ambush happened too fast. One moment, she was following her contact through a narrow alley, with peeling walls and broken windows that bore witness to the violence of that place. The next, gunfire echoed through the streets, ricocheting off ancient stones and making her heart race. The cameraman shouted something she couldn't hear over the ringing in her ears. The producer grabbed her arm hard, pulling her behind a rusted vehicle. But it was already too late. They were surrounded. Armed men emerged from the shadows like deadly ghosts. Brenda felt the cold metal of a gun pressing against her back. Her entire body froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The fear was real, tangible, almost suffocating. And then he appeared. Jeff. She didn't know his name yet. All she saw was a man emerging from the shadows as if he owned them. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that made the armed men around him seem insignificant. His eyes, cold, calculating, impossible to read, locked onto hers with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. He didn't speak right away. He just looked, really looked, as if he could see every secret she'd ever kept, every fear she'd ever swallowed, every dream she'd ever dared to dream. As if, in that single second, he knew her better than anyone ever had. Brenda's heart was beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Let the others go," he said, his voice low, hoarse, but absolutely commanding. It wasn't a request. It was an order. The men hesitated, but a single sharp look from him was enough. They immediately stepped back. Brenda's colleagues were shoved away, but not her. A hand, and firm, unyielding, grabbed her wrist and pulled her forward, toward him. She stumbled, her breath failing as she found herself inches from his chest. The smell of leather, smoke, and something darker flooded her senses, making her head spin. She forced herself to lift her gaze, to meet his eyes, even though every instinct screamed for her to run. "Didn't you come here to kill me?" she whispered, hating how her voice trembled. His lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No." She swallowed hard. "Then what do you want?" He leaned in, just slightly, his breath hot against her ear. "I came to play with you." Her pulse exploded. She tried to pull away, but his grip on her wrist tightened. Not enough to hurt, but enough to remind her who was in control. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, his voice a dark velvet that wrapped around her like a forbidden promise. "This is no place for someone like you." "Someone like me?" She forced herself to sound braver than she felt. "You don't know anything about me." His eyes gleamed with amusement. "Don't I?" He released her wrist, but before she could step back, his hand came up, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was so light, so unexpectedly gentle, that it sent a shiver down her spine. "You're reckless," he said softly, his gaze tracing her features as if memorizing every detail. "You chase stories that could kill you. You don't trust easily, and you have fire in your eyes, even when you're afraid." Brenda felt her face flush. How could he know all this? They'd barely met. "You should be afraid of me," he continued, his voice dropping even lower, becoming almost intimate. "Everyone is." "Maybe I'm not like everyone else," she replied, lifting her chin in defiance. Something shifted in his gaze, a flicker of curiosity? Admiration? She couldn't tell. But whatever it was, it made the air between them even more charged. He took a step closer, eliminating the space between them. Brenda could feel the heat of his body, could hear his breathing, slow and controlled, while hers was completely erratic. "Do you have any idea?" he whispered, his eyes locked on hers. "What you provoke, Brenda." Hearing her own name leave his lips was like an electric shock. She hadn't told him. "So how do you know my name?" she asked, her voice barely coming out. He smiled, a small, mysterious smile that promised secrets and danger. "I know many things about you." Before she could respond, he pulled away, turning to the men who were still watching the scene in silence. "Take her to the safe hotel. No one touches her. Understood?" The men nodded, but Brenda wasn't willing to obey so easily. "Wait," she called out. "You can't just kidnap me and—" He turned back so quickly she almost stepped back. He was close again. Too close, his eyes piercing hers with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "I just saved your life," he said, his voice low but full of authority. "So yes, I can." And with that, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Brenda alone with her racing heart, trembling legs, and a single question pounding in her mind. Who the hell was this man? 3 months had passed since that night in the dark alley. 3 months since Brenda felt Jeff's firm touch on her wrist, since she heard his voice whispering her name as if it were a dangerous secret. 3 months since she returned home, trying to convince herself that all of it was nothing more than a professional encounter under extreme circumstances. But the truth? She couldn't forget him. She tried. She dove into work, covered dozens of stories, wrote investigative reports that won awards. But always in some quiet moment of the night, when New York City finally fell asleep outside, she found herself thinking about him, about his eyes, about that dangerous smile, about the feeling of being simultaneously terrified and alive. And now, as she adjusted her long emerald green silk dress in the bathroom mirror of a 5-star Manhattan hotel, Brenda tried to push those thoughts away. Tonight was important. Horizon News' annual business gala brought together the biggest names in journalism, politics, and business. She was there to network, not to fantasize about a dangerous man on the other side of the world. The event hall was stunning. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting golden light over tables decorated with white rose arrangements and scented candles. The air was thick with the aroma of French champagne, expensive perfumes, and the soft murmur of important conversations. Classical music played quietly in the background, a string quartet in the corner of the hall. Brenda accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, the cold, fizzy liquid touching her lips. She observed the crowd, executives in impeccable tuxedos, women in designer dresses, polite smiles masking silent negotiations. Brenda Carter? She turned at the sound of her name. A middle-aged man, a familiar face from the network's management, smiled at her. "Mr. Morrison," she greeted him. "Good to see you." "The pleasure is mine. I want to introduce you to someone very special, one of our new strategic partners." Brenda nodded politely, following him through the hall. They stopped near one of the panoramic windows that offered a spectacular view of the illuminated city. A man stood with his back turned, looking out, hands in the pockets of a perfectly tailored black suit. "Mr. Collier," Morrison called, "I'd like to introduce you to our best investigative reporter." The man turned slowly, and Brenda's world stopped. Jeff. But this wasn't the Jeff she'd met that chaotic night in a foreign country. This man was transformed. Hair perfectly slicked back, beard trimmed with precision, Italian-tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. He looked legitimate, powerful, as if he truly were the heir to a corporate empire. But his eyes, those cold, calculating, unforgettable eyes, they were exactly the same. And the moment they met hers, something passed through them, a flash of recognition, of satisfaction, of something much more dangerous. "Brenda Carter," he said, his voice smooth as dark velvet but loaded with something only she could hear. Finally, she couldn't breathe. couldn't think. How was he here? What was happening? Morrison, oblivious to the tension, smiled broadly. Mr. Collier expressed personal interest in working exclusively with you on a special project. Lucky, isn't it? Jeff extended his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Carter. Brenda looked at his hand. Every fiber of her being screamed not to touch him, not to enter this game. But she was a professional. She was strong. She wasn't going to show fear. She extended her hand. The moment their skin touched, it was like an electric shock coursing through her entire body. His hand was warm, firm, and he held hers a second longer than appropriate. His thumb lightly grazed the side of her hand, a touch so small, so calculated, that it could have been accidental. But it wasn't. The pleasure is mine, she managed to say, forcing her voice to remain steady. His lips curved into a half-smile. I'm sure it will be. Morrison began explaining the project details, but Brenda could barely hear. Jeff didn't take his eyes off her. He studied every movement, every breath, like a predator watching its prey. Finally, Morrison was called away by someone else and left them alone. The silence between them was deafening, even with the music and conversations around them. Do you know me? Brenda finally asked, keeping her voice low. Jeff took a step closer. His scent, woody with notes of sandalwood and something slightly spicy, invaded her senses. More than you imagine, he replied, his voice low, too intimate for the formal setting. Who are you, really? Someone who hasn't been able to stop thinking about you. Her heart raced. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters right now. He moved closer, and Brenda instinctively stepped back, but her back met the cold glass wall. Jeff placed one hand on the wall beside her head, not touching her, but creating a barrier that trapped her there. Are you afraid? He asked softly, his eyes roaming her face. Should I be? She countered, lifting her chin. He smiled. A slow, dangerous smile that made her stomach flip. Probably. The fingers of his free hand lightly brushed her arm, slowly moving up to her shoulder, leaving a trail of heat on her skin. The touch was so light it could barely be felt, but somehow it burned. What do you want from me? She whispered. Everything, he answered without hesitation, his eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that left her breathless. Don't you want to talk to me? He teased, leaning closer, his face now inches from hers. Ask questions. Discover my secrets. You're dangerous, she said, trying to maintain emotional distance, even though physically there was no more space between them. And yet, he murmured, his eyes dropping to her lips before returning to her eyes. You're trembling from being so close to me. It was true, she was trembling, but not from fear. Is this a game to you? She asked, her voice barely coming out. No. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her skin. This is much more serious than you imagine. Before she could respond, someone called his name from across the hall. Jeff pulled away, but not before whispering near her ear. I'm going to come find you again, Brenda, and when that happens, you won't be able to run from me. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone, leaning against the cold wall, her heart beating wildly and her entire body vibrating with a mixture of fear and desire. And as she watched him disappear into the crowd, one question hammered in her mind. Did she really want to run from him? The following weeks were silent torture. Jeff, or rather Jefferson Collier, as he was now known, became a constant presence in Brenda's life. Not physically, not always, but his shadow hung over everything. Flowers arrived at her desk without a card. Encrypted messages appeared in her work email, always with a single line, "Thinking of you." And when she least expected it, he simply appeared. At the coffee shop across from the station, in the building elevator, once even at her apartment door late at night just to make sure she was safe. It was unsettling, disturbing, and to her horror, thrilling. Brenda knew she should keep her distance. Every professional instinct screamed that something was wrong. Men like Jefferson Collier didn't appear out of nowhere. Fortunes built so quickly weren't clean, and that look, cold, calculating, dangerous, didn't match the polished story of a successful businessman. So she did what any good investigative reporter would do. She started digging. The Horizon News archive room smelled like old paper and reheated coffee. It was late at night, well after business hours. Most employees had already left. leaving only the quiet hum of computers and the flickering fluorescent light in the hallway. Brenda sat at the table, surrounded by stacks of documents, printed photos, and old reports. She'd spent hours combing through digital files, searching for any mention of the name Jefferson Collier. She'd found some things: articles about corporate acquisitions, company openings, profiles in business magazines. But something didn't add up: the dates, the locations. Small inconsistencies that most people wouldn't notice, but to a trained eye like hers, they were like loose threads in a fabric about to unravel. And then she found it. An old photograph, somewhat faded, taken 3 years earlier during an international police operation. The image showed a man being escorted by federal agents, his face partially hidden but visible enough. Brenda's heart stopped. It was him, Jeff, younger, with a longer beard, but definitely him. And beneath the photo, the caption read, "Suspect in international smuggling network, killed during confrontation with authorities." Killed. But how could he be dead if he was alive, breathing, sending her flowers, and invading her every thought? Brenda's hands trembled as she picked up the attached report. She read every word, every detail. The case was exactly the same one she'd covered months ago, the same border, the same crimes, the same network of murders and smuggling. Jeff wasn't just connected to it, he was it. "Find anything interesting?" Brenda gasped, spinning around abruptly. Jeff was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with that calm, dangerous expression she'd come to know so well. He wore a dark coat over a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. "How did he get in? How long had he been there? How did you get in here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, but failing miserably. He pushed off from the door and began walking toward her, slow, deliberate, like a lion approaching its prey. "Do you really think there's anywhere I can't get to?" Brenda stood up, placing the table between them like a fragile barrier. "You're supposed to be dead." He stopped on the other side of the table, eyes fixed on hers. "Supposed to be? That's what it says here." She tapped her finger on the report. "Jefferson Collier, killed 3 years ago in a confrontation with authorities. So tell me, who the hell are you?" For a long moment he said nothing. He just watched her as if deciding how much to reveal. Then he walked around the table. Brenda backed up, but he kept advancing until she found herself cornered against the wall of the empty hallway. He placed his hands on either side of her head, trapping her there. "You're still trying to expose me?" he asked, his voice low, hoarse, loaded with something between amusement and danger. "It's my job," she replied, lifting her chin defiantly, even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "No," he murmured, leaning closer, his face so near she could feel the heat of his breath. "Your job is to tell stories. But what you really want is to understand why your heart races every time I get close." "You're avoiding the question," she whispered, but her voice came out weak, trembling. His eyes dropped to her lips, lingering there for a second that felt like an eternity. "Am I? Who are you really, Jeff?" He smiled, a small, bitter smile. "Someone who's been many things, some good, most not. You're dangerous. I always have been. And yet, you want me to trust you?" He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers gently grazing her skin. The touch was so gentle, so completely different from the intensity in his gaze, that it made her stomach flip. "No," he said softly. "I want you to understand me." "How can I understand someone who lies about who they are?" "I never lied to you, Brenda." He tilted his head, his lips almost touching her ear. "I just didn't tell you everything." Her entire body was on fire. Every nerve, every ending, every cell screamed to run. But at the same time, a part of her, a deep hidden part she didn't want to admit, wanted to stay. "Tell me now," she whispered. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Do you really want to know? Because once you know, there's no going back." "I'm already too involved," she admitted, her voice barely coming out. "So tell me, who are you?" Jeff held her face with both hands, his touch firm but gentle. He looked at her as if memorizing every feature, every detail. "Jefferson Collier died 3 years ago," he said, his voice low, heavy. "I made sure of that. I erased my past, rebuilt my life, transformed myself into someone new. But that man you met that night, that's still me. And no matter how many times I try to bury it, he always comes back when I look at you." "Why?" she asked, feeling tears forming in her eyes without understanding why. "Why me?" He brought his face closer, his lips brushing her forehead in a gesture so unexpectedly tender it made her tremble. "Because deep down," he murmured, his voice so low she could barely hear, "you want to be mine." Before she could respond, he pulled away, leaving her alone in the cold hallway, her heart racing, her mind spinning, and a single certainty burning in her chest. She was already his, and that terrified her. Truth had weight. Brenda felt it every day since that night in the archives. The knowledge of who Jeff really was, or who he had been, pressed on her chest like a stone. She knew she should report him, expose everything, do her job as a journalist. But every time she picked up the phone or opened a new document to write, something stopped her. It wasn't fear, or at least, it wasn't just fear. It was something much more complicated, something that kept her awake at night, tossing in her sheets, thinking about him, about his touch, about his voice, about his eyes fixed on hers as if he could see her soul. And then, on a grey November morning, everything changed again. Brenda was at her desk in the newsroom, reviewing notes from a story about corporate fraud, when her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello? You're going to need to trust me now." It was Jeff. His voice was tense, urgent in a way she'd never heard before. "Jeff, what? Don't talk. Just listen." There was background noise, cars, muffled voices. He was on the move. "There's a traitor inside my organization. Someone who's trying to destroy me and will use anyone close to me to do it. That includes you." Brenda's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're in danger, and I need your help." "My help? Jeff, I'm a journalist, not—" "You're the only person I can trust." His voice dropped, becoming softer, almost vulnerable. "Please, Brenda, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't absolutely necessary." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. "What do you want me to do?" "Meet me at the Riverside Hotel, room 1407, 2 hours, come alone." And then he hung up. The rain started falling as Brenda got out of the cab in front of the Riverside Hotel. It wasn't a soft, romantic rain. It was heavy, cold, soaking everything in seconds. She ran to the lobby, her heels clicking against the wet marble, her coat already clinging to her body. The elevator seemed to take forever. Each floor it climbed made her heart beat faster. What was she doing? This was crazy. She should be calling the police, not running to meet a man who was supposed to be dead. But she couldn't stop. When the door to room 1407 opened, Jeff was there. He wore only a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, the first few buttons open revealing the strong line of his neck. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. But it was his eyes that held her. There was something different in them, a vulnerability she'd never seen before. "You came," he said, as if he hadn't been sure she would. "You said I was in danger." Brenda entered the room, dripping water on the carpet. "So here I am." He closed the door behind her, locking it. The sound of the lock made her stomach flip, not from fear but from something much more dangerous. Jeff grabbed a towel from the dresser and held it out to her. She hesitated before accepting, but when their fingers brushed, that familiar electric current ran through her body. "You're soaked," he said, his voice low. "It's raining outside," she replied, trying to keep her tone light, but failing. He took a step closer, another and another, until he was inches from her, his gaze fixed on her face. Slowly, he took the towel from her hands. "Let me help." Before she could protest, he began gently drying her face. The soft fabric passed over her cheeks, her forehead, her nose. But it was the touch of his hands, firm, careful, almost reverent, that made her shiver. He moved the towel over her neck, moving slowly, feeling the racing pulse beneath the warm skin. He moved down to her shoulders, gently pushing the wet coat down. The fabric slid down her arms and fell to the floor with a muffled sound. Brenda couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Jeff tossed the towel aside and simply looked at her. Her clothes were still wet, clinging to her body. The grey dress she wore marked every curve. Her long hair dripped on her bare shoulders. "Do you hate me for this?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. "For what?" she whispered. "For putting me in danger? For using me? For making me feel things I shouldn't feel? For all of it." She took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. But it was impossible when he was so close, when the heat of his body wrapped around hers like a cocoon. "I hate," she admitted, "that you make me feel all this and yet want you so much." His eyes darkened. He raised his hand, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw, moving down her neck, feeling the racing pulse. "I don't deserve you," he murmured. "No," she agreed. "You don't. But still. You're here. Still. I'm here." The tension between them was almost unbearable. The air was charged, heavy, vibrating with everything that wasn't being said. Brenda could feel every inch of the space between them, so small but at the same time immense. Jeff took another step. Now there was no space at all. His chest almost touched hers. His breath was hot against her face. "Do you know what's going to happen if you stay here?" he asked, his voice so low it was almost a whisper. "I know. And still, you won't leave?" She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. No. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. And in that silence, everything was said. All the fears, all the desires, all the madness of that impossible moment. Then, slowly, so slowly it seemed like torture, Jeff leaned in. But he didn't kiss her. Instead, he pressed his forehead against hers, eyes closed, heavy breathing mingling with hers. "You drive me crazy, Brenda," he whispered, his voice loaded with emotion. "From the first moment I saw you, you drive me crazy." "Then take me with you," she replied, her voice trembling. "To the depths of that madness." He opened his eyes, and what she saw there made her tremble. Desire, yes, but also something deeper. Something that seemed dangerously close to love. Jeff held her face with both hands, his thumbs caressing her cheekbones. He looked at her as if memorizing every detail, as if he wanted to engrave that moment on his soul. "Are you sure?" he asked, giving her one last chance to run. "I am," she answered without hesitation. And then, finally, he pulled her close. But he didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her, holding her against his chest with an intensity that took her breath away. She could feel his heart beating, strong, fast, out of control. He buried his face in her wet hair, breathing deeply, as if trying to absorb her. "I'm going to protect you," he murmured against the top of her head. "No matter what happens, I'm going to protect you." And in that moment, embraced in the arms of a dangerous man in a hotel room during a storm, Brenda finally understood. She was no longer just in physical danger. Her heart was completely exposed, and that terrified her more than any external threat ever could. 2 weeks had passed since that night at the hotel. 2 weeks of unanswered questions, of charged glances across crowded rooms, of encrypted messages arriving in the middle of the night. 2 weeks of Brenda trying to maintain professional composure while her inner world crumbled. Jeff had kept his promise to keep her safe. Discreet men followed her at a distance. She knew it, even though she never saw them directly. Security cameras were installed in her building. Her car was replaced with one with bulletproof windows. And every night, without fail, he sent a message. "Are you okay?" And every night, she replied, "Yes." But the truth was, she wasn't okay. She was confused, torn, feeling things she shouldn't feel for a man she shouldn't want. And then on a Friday afternoon, when most employees had already left for the weekend, it happened. Brenda was alone in the Horizon News elevator, coming down from the 12th floor after a meeting that had run overtime. She held a folder full of documents under her arm, her bag on her shoulder, her thoughts already flying to her apartment, a hot bath and a glass of wine. The elevator stopped on the 8th floor. The doors opened and Jeff walked in. She froze. He wore a dark grey suit, impeccable as always, but there was something different in his face, a tension, an urgency she couldn't decipher. "Jeff," she said, her voice coming out weaker than intended, "what are you doing here?" He didn't answer immediately. He just pressed the button to close the doors and before she could react, hit the emergency stop button. The elevator stopped with a gentle jolt. The main lights flickered and then dimmed, leaving only the emergency lights, weak, amber, casting long shadows in the corners. Brenda's heart began to pound. "What are you doing?" she asked, taking a step back, but there were only a few square feet of space. He took a step toward her. "I can't take it anymore." "Can't take what?" "Pretending." Another step. "Keeping my distance." Another. "Acting like this isn't killing me." Brenda backed up until her back touched the cold metal wall of the elevator. "Jeff, we can't." "We can." He placed one hand on the wall beside her head, leaning in, his face getting dangerously close. "The question is, do you want to?" She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out, because the truth was yes. God, yes. She wanted it so much it hurt. "I'm not good for you," she finally whispered. He let out a low laugh, without humor. "And am I good for you?" "Brenda, I'm the worst thing that could happen to you." "Then why are we doing this?" He raised his free hand, his fingers gently brushing her cheek, moving down the line of her jaw. "Because sometimes, the worst thing is also the only thing that makes sense." His eyes dropped to her lips, and she saw when the decision was made. She saw the exact moment he stopped fighting. "I'm going to kiss you now," he murmured, his voice hoarse, loaded. "If you don't want this, push me away, scream, do something." But she did nothing. She just waited, her heart beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. Jeff leaned in closer. His nose brushed against hers, hot breath mingled with hers, and then finally his lips touched hers. It was like a spark igniting gasoline. The kiss started soft, almost hesitant, as if he were testing, savoring, discovering. But when she responded, when her hands instinctively rose to his shoulders, everything changed. Jeff pressed his body against hers, trapping her against the wall. The hand that was on the wall dropped to her waist, pulling her closer. The other held her face, tilting it at the perfect angle to deepen the kiss. There was no gentleness now, only hunger, desire, months of unresolved tension exploding all at once. Brenda grabbed his shirt, pulling him impossibly closer. He groaned low against her mouth, a sound so intimate, so raw it made her tremble completely. His lips left her mouth only to trace a path of kisses along her jaw, down her neck. He found the racing pulse at the base of her throat and pressed his lips there, feeling her heart racing. "Do you have any idea?" he murmured against her skin, his voice so hoarse it barely sounded like him. "How much I've wanted you since that first night." She couldn't form words. She just held his hair, pulling him back to her mouth. He obeyed eagerly, kissing her with an intensity that made her knees weaken. His hands explored, not invasively, but with a reverence that made her feel precious. One hand on her waist, the other moving up her back, pulling her even closer as if he wanted to fuse their two bodies into one. Brenda had never been kissed like this, had never felt so desired, so consumed, so completely present in a single moment. When they finally separated to breathe, both were breathless. Jeff rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, trying to regain control. "That was..." she began, but couldn't find the words. "I know," he whispered. They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing together. The world outside completely forgotten. Brenda's folder was lying on the floor. Her bag had slipped off her shoulder, but none of that mattered. "What are we doing, Jeff?" she finally asked, her voice small, vulnerable. He opened his eyes, looking directly into hers. "Something dangerous." "Should I be afraid?" "Probably." He kissed her forehead softly. "But I promise, I'll protect you from everything, even from myself if necessary. And if I don't want to be protected from you?" His eyes darkened again. "Then we're both lost." He kissed her once more, slow, deep, as if engraving her taste in his memory. When he pulled away, there was something in his eyes she couldn't decipher, something that seemed dangerously close to sadness. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice heavy. Brenda's stomach sank. "What?" "The traitor. I know who it is." "And?" "And to prove it, I need your help. But it's going to put you in real danger, Brenda. Danger I don't know if I can control." She held his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. I already chose to be here. Already chose you. So tell me what you need. He closed his eyes as if her words hurt. You have no idea what you're saying. Then show me. Jeff opened his eyes, and what she saw there made her shiver. Not from fear, but from something much deeper. It was love. He loved her. She could see it, even if he didn't say it. I love you, he said, as if he'd read her thoughts. And that's why I shouldn't let you do this. Tears burned in her eyes. But you will? Yes. He pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. Because I'm too selfish to let you go. And there, in that stopped elevator, under dim emergency lights, Brenda understood she had crossed a line from which there was no return. She was completely, irrevocably, dangerously in love with him, and everything was about to change. The truth arrived like a punch to the stomach. Brenda was sitting on the leather sofa in Jeff's private office, an untouched glass of whiskey on the coffee table in front of her. The heavy curtains were closed, blocking out the morning light. The room smelled of varnished wood, old paper, and that woody scent of his that was now permanently etched in her memory. Jeff stood in front of her, hands in his pockets, jaw tense. He'd spent the last hour explaining everything, the plan, the traitor, the risks. And each word was like a knife being slowly driven into her chest. You used me, she said, her voice coming out firmer than expected. From the beginning. All of this was just to get to him. No, Jeff shook his head, but couldn't look directly at her. In the beginning, yes, I admitted, but after what? She stood up, anger finally overcoming pain. After you decided that loving me was more convenient, that it would be easier to manipulate me if I was in love with you. It wasn't like that. Then how was it, Jeff? She took a step toward him, her hands trembling. Explain to me how all of this wasn't an elaborate lie. Explain to me how I'm supposed to believe a single word that comes out of your mouth. He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes almost made her waver. It was pain, real, deep, raw pain. You think this is easy for me? He ran his hands through his hair, disheveling it. You think I planned to fall in love with you, that I wanted this? Then why didn't you tell me the truth before? Because I was trying to protect you. He took a step toward her, his voice rising. The less you knew, the safer you'd be. I don't need your protection. I need your honesty. Then here's honesty. He was close now, so close she could see the tension lines around his eyes, the dark shadows beneath them suggesting sleepless nights. Yes, I sought you out because I knew you could help me. Yes, in the beginning it was strategic. But at some point, and I don't even know when exactly, you stopped being part of a plan and became the only real thing in my life. Brenda felt tears burning in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. How can I believe that? You can't. He held her shoulders, firm but gentle. There's nothing I can say that will make you believe, but I'm telling you anyway because you deserve to know. Know what? That I love you. His voice broke slightly. That I love you in a way I've never loved anyone. That the idea of losing you terrifies me more than any enemy ever has. And that I don't know anymore how to keep you safe, Brenda. Because every day you spend near me, you're in more danger. She looked at him, really looked, and saw a broken man. Not the cold, calculating criminal the files described, not the ruthless businessman everyone feared, but a frightened man, fighting against something bigger than himself. You should have thought of that, she whispered, tears finally escaping, before you made me fall in love with you. His grip on her shoulders loosened. He released her, taking a step back, his face closing off again into that cold mask she knew so well. You're right, he said, his voice returning to that controlled, distant tone. I should have, and now I'm going to give you the choice I never had. What choice? Leave, now. I'll guarantee your safety, erase any connection between us. You go back to your life, to your career, and I disappear. Brenda's heart stopped. Is that what you want? No. The word came out rough, pained, but it's what's right. Heavy silence filled the room. The antique clock on the wall marked the seconds, each tick sounding like a countdown to something irreversible. Brenda knew what she should do. The rational, professional, sensible part of her screamed to accept the offer. To leave, to save herself while she still could. But there was another part. A part that had seen beyond the lies, beyond the danger, beyond everything that should make her run. A part that saw the man behind the mask. And that part couldn't imagine a world where she simply left him. "You think all of this is a game?" She took a step toward him, her voice trembling with emotion. "That I can just turn off what I feel, that I can wake up tomorrow and pretend you never existed?" "Brenda, no," she cut him off. "You don't understand. I've spent my entire life being careful, making sensible decisions, playing it safe, and then you showed up and turned everything upside down. And yes, you used me. Yes, you lied. But you also made me feel alive. For the first time in years, I felt completely, totally alive." He watched her, motionless, eyes fixed on her face. "I don't know anymore how to keep you safe," he repeated, his voice breaking. "Then stop trying." She closed the distance between them, placing her hands on his chest, feeling his heart beating hard under her palms. "Stop trying to protect me from you. Stop trying to make the choice for me. If you stay..." He covered her hands with his. "If you stay, there are no guarantees, no guaranteed happy ending. There's just us, and everything that comes with it. I know. You could die. I know. You could lose everything. I know." She raised her gaze to him, eyes shining with tears and determination. "But if I leave now, I've already lost the only thing that really matters." Something broke in his gaze. The mask finally crumbled completely. He pulled her against his chest with desperate force, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you," he murmured, his voice muffled. "Probably not." She pressed against him. "But you have me anyway." They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other, as if trying to anchor themselves in the midst of a storm. Brenda could feel his body trembling slightly, as if he were fighting to maintain control. When they finally pulled apart, Jeff held her face with both hands, his thumbs wiping away tears she didn't even realize were falling. "Then we do this my way," he said, his voice firm now. "My way means you obey me when I say you're in danger. It means you trust me to protect you, and it means you never, ever act alone without telling me first. You're being controlling. I'm being realistic." He leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. "I've already lost too much in life, Brenda. I'm not going to lose you too." She closed her eyes, feeling his warmth, his scent, his solid presence. "Okay, your way, our way," he corrected softly. Then he kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss in the elevator, desperate, hungry, urgent. This was different. It was a promise, a commitment, a mutual surrender. When they separated, they both knew something had fundamentally changed. There was no going back. They were in this together now, and for better or worse. "What do we do now?" she asked. Jeff ran his thumb across her lips, his gaze intense. "Now, we go after the traitor, together. And then..." He hesitated. "And then?" A small smile, the first she'd seen in days, touched his lips. "And then I spend the rest of my life making up for every lie I ever told you. That's going to take a long time. I have all the time in the world." He pulled her in for another kiss, this time deeper, more intense. "As long as it's with you." And there, in that silent office, as danger closed in from all sides, Brenda made a choice that would change everything. She chose to stay, chose to fight, chose to love, even knowing it could cost everything. Night fell over the city like a black velvet veil sprinkled with golden lights. The hotel was in the heart of Manhattan, a discreet and luxurious refuge where no one asked questions and privacy was guaranteed. Jeff had chosen the place carefully, not just for security, but because he knew this night would be different from all others. They'd spent the day dealing with documents, evidence, preparations to confront the traitor. But now, with the room door closed behind them and the world outside temporarily silenced, there was nothing left but the two of them. Brenda stood near the panoramic window, looking at the city lights stretching to the horizon. She wore a simple navy blue silk dress that fell softly over her body, her feet bare on the plush carpet. Her hair was loose, falling in waves over her shoulders. Jeff watched her from the other side of the room, leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets. He'd removed his jacket and tie, leaving only the white shirt with the first few buttons open. But it was his gaze that captured attention, intense, vulnerable, full of something that went far beyond desire. "You're quiet," he said softly, breaking the silence. She turned to face him, a small smile touching her lips. "I'm thinking." "About what?" "About how we got here." She crossed her arms, not in defense, but as if hugging herself. "A few months ago, I didn't even know you existed. And now?" "And now?" He pushed off the wall, walking slowly toward her. "Now I can't imagine my life without you." Jeff stopped a few steps away, his breathing growing heavier. "Are you sure about that?" "Because once we cross this line, there's no going back, Brenda, not for me." She looked into his eyes, those dark eyes that had already seen her afraid, angry, desirous, and now, in love. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He closed the distance between them in 2 steps, but didn't touch her immediately. Instead, he stood there, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, so close she could count each breath. "I've dreamed about this," he confessed, his voice hoarse and low. "Since that first night, I've dreamed about touching you, having you, making you mine in every possible way." Brenda's heart raced. "Then why are you waiting?" A slow, almost dangerous smile curved his lips. "Because when I finally touch you, I want to savor every second." And then finally he touched her. It started with his fingertips, light as feathers, tracing the line of her arm from wrist to shoulder. The touch was so gentle, it almost seemed imaginary, but left a trail of fire on her skin. Brenda closed her eyes, feeling every sensation amplified, his breath near her face, his scent enveloping her, his warmth so close, but still not close enough. Jeff slid his hand along the curve of her neck, his fingers burying themselves in her hair, gently tilting her head back. He leaned in, his lips grazing the line of her jaw, moving down her neck, finding that sensitive spot just below her ear. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her skin, his voice vibrating through her. "So perfect." "I'm not perfect," she whispered, eyes still closed. "To me you are." He kissed the racing pulse in her neck. "Every part of you. Every imperfection. Every scar, every secret." Her hands instinctively rose to his chest, feeling the tense muscles beneath the thin shirt. She could feel his heart beating, strong, fast, as out of control as hers. Jeff pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. What she saw there made her tremble. It wasn't just desire, it was reverence, as if she were something precious, something he never wanted to break. "Are you sure?" he asked again, giving her one last chance to pull back. In response, Brenda held his face with both hands, pulling him into a kiss that answered all questions. It wasn't gentle. It was urgent, desperate, full of months of unresolved tension. Jeff responded immediately, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her against him until there was no space between their bodies. He deepened the kiss, exploring, savoring, as if wanting to memorize her taste. Her hands went to the buttons of his shirt, unbuttoning them one by one, trembling slightly with urgency. He helped, pulling the shirt over his shoulders and letting it fall to the floor. Brenda pulled back for a moment, just to look. His body was a work of art, defined muscles, tanned skin, some scars that told stories she didn't yet know. "May I?" she asked, her fingers hovering over a scar on his shoulder. "You can do whatever you want with me," he replied, his voice hoarse. She traced the scar delicately, then another on his chest, learning the map of his body with her hands. Each touch made his muscles contract, his breathing grow heavier. Jeff held her face again, kissing her deeply, while his hands found the zipper at the back of her dress. He lowered it slowly, his fingers caressing the exposed skin as the fabric slid. The dress fell in a whisper of silk at her feet. For a moment, he just looked, really looked. And Brenda, who had always been so confident, so controlled, felt vulnerable in a way she'd never experienced. "You're perfect," he repeated, but this time his voice was loaded with emotion. "Perfect for me." He picked her up with an ease that made her feel weightless, carrying her to the bed. He laid her gently on the white, soft sheets, as if she were made of glass. Jeff lay beside her, propped on one elbow, just looking. His fingers traced the outline of her face, moving down her neck, her collarbone, exploring every curve with a reverence that made her heart ache. "I love you," he said, and this time there was no doubt, no hesitation. "I love you in a way I never knew was possible." Tears filled her eyes. "I love you too." He leaned in, kissing her slowly, deeply, as if they had all the time in the world. His hands explored, discovering sensitive spots that made her gasp. He kissed her shoulder, her collarbone, the valley between her breasts, each kiss a promise. Brenda held his hair, guiding him back to her mouth, wanting to feel his lips on hers. Her hands explored his back, feeling the muscles contract under her touch. The rest of their clothes gradually disappeared, without hurry, without desperate urgency, just two bodies learning each other, discovering what made the other tremble, moan, gasp. When they finally joined, it was with a tenderness that surprised them both. Jeff held her face, looking into her eyes, wanting to see every expression, every emotion. "Are you okay?" he whispered, his voice tense from holding back. "Yes," she breathed, her hands gripping his shoulders. "More than okay." They moved together, slow at first, savoring every sensation, every second. But gradually, the intensity increased. Breaths grew heavier, moans escaped, hands gripped tighter. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, something that transcended the body and touched the soul. Each movement was a confession, each touch a promise, each kiss a declaration. When they reached the climax together, it was as if the entire world had stopped. Jeff buried his face in her neck, repeating her name like a prayer. Brenda held him tight, feeling tears stream down the corners of her eyes, not from pain, but from a happiness so intense it hurt. Afterward, lying intertwined, sweat cooling on their skin, hearts still beating out of sync, neither spoke for a long time. They just stayed there, holding each other, as if fearing the moment would disappear if they spoke. Jeff finally broke the silence, gently stroking her hair. "I never thought I could surrender like this." Brenda turned to look at him, a small smile touching her lips. "Maybe you were just waiting for the right woman." He smiled, a real smile, without guards, without masks. "Maybe." She traced the contours of his face with her fingers, memorizing every detail. "What do we do now?" "Now?" He pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. "Now I hold you until dawn. And then I hold you a little longer. And the danger? The traitor? Everything else? It'll still be there tomorrow." He looked at her with an intensity that made her heart squeeze. "But tonight is just ours." Brenda nestled against his chest, listening to the steady beating of his heart. She knew the danger was still there, waiting. She knew there were battles ahead. But in that moment, in the arms of the man she loved, she finally understood what it meant to be completely, irrevocably consumed by love. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of it. Morning arrived gently, with rays of golden sunlight streaming through the hotel room curtains. Brenda woke wrapped in warmth, Jeff's arms around her, his chest against her back, his breath steady and calm on her neck. For one perfect moment, she just existed there, felt, absorbed the peace of that instant before the real world came flooding back in. But the world always comes back. Jeff stirred behind her, tightening his embrace before kissing her bare shoulder. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice hoarse from sleep. "Good morning," she replied, turning to face him. He looked different in the morning light, younger somehow. The tension lines that normally marked his face were softened. His eyes, normally so guarded, were open and vulnerable. "How are you?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Happy," she admitted. "Scared. Determined." He smiled slightly. "Good combination for what's ahead." "Jeff," she hesitated. "About last night. Regrets?" The question came out quick, defensive, as if he expected her to say yes. "Never." She held his face, forcing him to look at her. "I never regret you, but now we need to finish this. We need to stop the traitor before it's too late." Something changed in his gaze. The vulnerability disappeared, replaced by that cold determination she knew so well. But this time there was something more. a protective ferocity that made her feel simultaneously safe and concerned. "Then let's end this," he said, his voice firm. "Together." 2 hours later, they were in an abandoned warehouse in New York's industrial district. The place smelled of old oil, rust, and abandonment. Broken windows let in beams of light that cut through the darkness like knives. Brenda was dressed discreetly. Dark jeans, leather jacket, comfortable boots. Nothing that would draw attention, but what really transformed her was the expression on her face. Focused, determined, fearless. Jeff stood beside her, checking a gun before tucking it into a hidden holster. He'd spent the morning giving instructions, explaining every detail of the plan, and for the first time, he wasn't trying to protect her by keeping her away. He was protecting her by keeping her close. "Do you remember the rules?" he asked for the third time. "Stay close to you. Don't act alone. Trust your instinct." She rolled her eyes affectionately. "You've only asked me that 5 times. And I'll ask 6 more if necessary." He held her face, forcing her to pay attention. "I need you to understand, Brenda. This man, he's dangerous. More dangerous than anything you've ever covered as a reporter." "I know. And if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does..." He took a deep breath. "You run. Don't look back. Don't try to be a hero. Just run." She held his hands, intertwining their fingers. "We're going to get out of this together. I promise." Before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Both turned, Jeff instinctively placing himself in front of Brenda. A figure emerged from the shadows, a middle-aged man, expensive suit, face marked by arrogance and time. Marcus Thornton, Jeff's supposed business partner. "And the traitor." "Jefferson," Marcus said, smiling as if they were at a normal business meeting. "What a surprise to find you here." "No surprise at all." Jeff kept his voice calm, controlled. "So you knew I'd find out eventually." Marcus shrugged. "I hoped it would take longer." "Why?" Brenda took a step beside Jeff, ignoring his warning look. "Why betray someone who trusted you?" Marcus's eyes slid to her, and something unpleasant passed through them. "Ah, the reporter. I've heard a lot about you." "Answer the question," Jeff said, his voice dropping dangerously. "Why betray?" Marcus laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Because some of us don't have the luxury of being reborn, Jefferson. Some of us are stuck dealing with the consequences, while others disappear and come back as new men." "That's no excuse to..." "It's not an excuse," Marcus interrupted, the civilized mask finally falling. "It's reality. You owe me, Jefferson. You owe me years of my life, my reputation, my family." Brenda felt the tension rising. She could see Jeff's muscles contracting, preparing to react. "I don't owe you anything," Jeff said, his voice firm. "You made your choices just as I made mine. And now I'm going to make you pay." Everything happened too fast. Marcus pulled a gun. Jeff shoved Brenda back. A shot echoed through the empty warehouse. Brenda fell against a pile of boxes, her heart racing. When she looked up, Jeff was on the ground, holding his shoulder, blood dripping between his fingers. "No!" she screamed, trying to run to him, but Marcus pointed the gun at her. "Stay where you are, sweetheart," he said, his voice icy. Jeff tried to get up, his face contorted in pain. "Leave her alone. This is between us." "Oh, but she's part of this now, isn't she?" Marcus smiled cruelly. "Your weakness, your vulnerability. How many times have you given up everything for her, Jefferson?" "Marcus," Brenda said, keeping her voice calm even with fear pulsing through her. "You don't want to do this. There are cameras here. There's evidence. If you kill us, you won't be able to escape." Marcus hesitated, and in that second of doubt, Jeff moved. He lunged forward, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, knocking Marcus to the ground. The gun slid across the concrete. Brenda ran, grabbing it before Marcus could reach it. She held the gun with both hands, pointing it at Marcus, while Jeff pinned him to the ground. "It's over," Jeff said, his voice tense with pain but firm. "It's over." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The police were coming. Jeff had called them before they even arrived at the warehouse, ensuring there was backup. Marcus was dragged away in handcuffs, shouting empty threats. Paramedics rushed to treat Jeff's wound, and through it all, Brenda remained by his side, holding his hand. Hours later at the hospital, Brenda sat beside Jeff's bed. The wound wasn't serious. The bullet had grazed his shoulder. But he was pale, tired, and yet still looked at her as if she were the most important thing in the world. "You saved my life," he said softly. "You saved mine first," she replied, holding his hand. "Brenda," he pulled her closer, "when I thought I was going to lose you, in that second when the gun was pointed at you, but you didn't lose me." She kissed his forehead. "We're here, together. That's what matters." He looked at her for a long moment, then pulled her into a kiss, soft, tender, full of all the words he couldn't say. When they separated, he murmured against her lips, "I promise I'll never put you in danger again." "You can't promise that," she said, smiling slightly, "because wherever you are, I'll be, no matter the danger." "Stubborn. In love." He smiled, a real smile, without guards. "Yes, you are." And there, in that sterile hospital room with the smell of disinfectant in the air and the sound of monitors in the background, they realized something fundamental. They had faced the worst. They had survived the chaos. And now, finally, they could begin to build something real, something lasting, something no danger could destroy. 6 months had passed since that day in the warehouse. 6 months of testimonies, investigations, court hearings, and sleepless nights rebuilding everything that had been broken. But finally, after so long fighting against shadows from the past, light had won. Marcus Thornton was convicted. 20 years in prison without possibility of parole. The network of crimes he'd built was dismantled piece by piece, and Jefferson Collier, finally had his name cleared of all charges. The news had been broadcast on all major networks. Brenda had covered the story personally, remaining professional even knowing she was talking about the man she loved. But now, with everything finally resolved, she could breathe. She stood on the balcony of their apartment. Yes, their apartment, because 3 months ago Jeff had asked her to move in with him, and she'd said yes without hesitation. The balcony offered a stunning view of the city at sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange, pink, and gold. The gentle spring breeze played with her loose hair. She wore a light summer dress, white with small blue flowers that Jeff had bought for her last week, saying it matched her eyes. "You're being thoughtful." His voice came from behind. Brenda didn't turn, just smiled when she felt his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her against his chest. "I'm thinking about how life has changed," she admitted, placing her hands over his. "A year ago, I was just a reporter trying to cover a story. And now?" "And now?" He kissed the top of her head, the gesture so natural and affectionate it made her heart squeeze. "Now I have everything." Jeff turned her in his arms, holding her face with both hands. His gaze was serious, intense, full of an emotion she now recognized easily. "Brenda," he began, his voice slightly trembling in a way she rarely heard, "you saved my life. And I'm not talking about that day in the warehouse." "Jeff, no, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "You saved me long before that. You saved me from myself, from a life of shadows and lies, from an empty future where I had everything and at the same time nothing. You showed me I could be more than my past, that I could, be loved." Tears began to form in her eyes. "You always deserved to be loved." "Maybe," he smiled slightly, "but I only believed it when I looked into your eyes and saw acceptance. Not judgment, not fear. Just love." He released her face and to Brenda's surprise knelt down. Her heart stopped, literally stopped. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her hands covering her mouth. Jeff took a small blue velvet box from his pocket. When he opened it, it revealed a ring, simple, elegant, with a diamond that captured the sunset light and reflected it in 1,000 different colors. "Brenda Carter," he said, his voice firm now, full of certainty. "You are the most real thing that's ever happened in my life. You are my light in the darkness, my anchor when everything threatens to pull me under, my present and my future." Tears flowed freely down her face now. "I know I'm not perfect," he continued. "I know I have a complicated past. I know there will be difficult days ahead. But I promise to spend every day for the rest of my life loving you, protecting you, making you happy." He held her hand, eyes fixed on hers. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Brenda couldn't speak. The emotion was so much it closed her throat. But then, finally, she managed to whisper, "Yes." His face lit up like she'd never seen. "Yes? Yes!" She laughed through her tears, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes!" He picked her up in his arms, spinning her in the air while they both laughed and cried at the same time. When he set her back down, he slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been made specifically for her. And then he kissed her. It was a kiss that contained everything. All the struggles they'd faced, all the tears they'd shed, all the nights they'd spent in each other's arms. But above all, it contained hope. The promise of a future together. When they finally separated, both were breathless, smiling, completely lost in each other. "I love you," she said, touching his face with reverence. "I love you more," he replied, kissing the palm of her hand. "Impossible. Totally possible." She laughed, nestling against his chest, listening to the steady beating of his heart. "So what do we do now?" Jeff wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on top of her head. "Now? We live. Really live. Without fear. Without shadows. Just us." "Sounds perfect." "It won't always be perfect," he admitted. "We'll fight. We'll have difficult days. But we'll have each other," she completed. "Exactly." They stayed like that while the sun finished setting, painting the sky in increasingly deep shades of purple and indigo. The city began to light up, and somehow everything seemed brighter, more vibrant, more alive. "Jeff," Brenda said after a long silence. "Everything you did, you giving up the shady business, clearing your name, building something legitimate. Was it for you or for me?" He thought for a moment before answering. "For us. I wanted to be someone worthy of you. But I also wanted to be someone I could be proud of myself. You inspired me to be better, but the choice was mine." She smiled, satisfied with the answer. "I'm proud of you, and I'm grateful for you." He turned her again, looking deeply into her eyes. "Everything I did, every choice, every sacrifice, every difficult moment was for you. So I could stand by your side and honestly say I deserve to be here." "You always deserved it," she insisted. "Maybe. But now I believe it." He kissed her forehead softly. "And all I want now is to spend the rest of my life kissing you." Brenda laughed, her eyes shining with joy and love. "Well, you have a whole lifetime ahead to do that." "Not enough time," he murmured, kissing her again. "But it'll have to do." And there on the balcony, with the city lighting up around them and the ring sparkling on her finger, they sealed a promise that no past could undo and no future could break. They were together. Finally free. Finally complete. And although they knew life would still bring challenges, they also knew they would face everything side by side. Because some loves aren't just found. They're built through fire, through struggle, through the daily choice to stay, to fight, to love. And that was the kind of love they had. Unbreakable, eternal, real. The wedding was intimate, just as they both wanted. There weren't hundreds of guests or luxurious halls. Just the people who really mattered. Close friends, some of Brenda's work colleagues, and Marcus. No, not Marcus. That name no longer had a place in their lives. The ceremony took place in a garden by a lake in the countryside, far from the city noise. It was autumn and the trees were painted in shades of red, orange and gold. The air smelled of damp earth and dry leaves, with a soft touch of white rose perfume decorating the simple wooden altar. Brenda wore a white lace dress, simple but elegant, that fell softly to her ankles. Her hair was loose with some small flowers woven into the strands. She wore no veil. There was nothing to hide, nothing to cover. Just her, complete and true. Jeff was waiting at the altar, wearing a navy blue suit that brought out his dark eyes. But it wasn't the clothes that drew attention. It was the expression on his face when he saw Brenda walking toward him, as if he were seeing the entire sky opening before him. When she reached his side, he held her hands, his eyes shining with undisguised emotion. "You're beautiful," he whispered, just for her to hear. "So are you," she replied, smiling through tears that were already beginning to form. The officiant's words were beautiful, but Jeff and Brenda barely heard them. They were lost in each other, communicating in silences and glances that said more than any written vow could express. But when it came time for personal vows, Jeff took a deep breath and began. "Brenda, a year ago, I was a lost man. I hid in shadows, building walls around myself so high that no one could reach. And then you appeared. Stubborn, defiant, impossible to ignore. You didn't accept my walls. You climbed them, tore them down, and showed me that on the other side, there was light." His voice trembled slightly. "You taught me I could be more than my past, that I could love and be loved, that I could change. Today, I promise to spend every day striving to be the man you deserve. I promise to love you on good days and difficult days. I promise to protect you, respect you, and never ever stop kissing you." Soft laughter echoed among the guests. Brenda wiped away tears, smiling. Then it was her turn. "Jeff, when I met you, you were an enigma. Dangerous, mysterious, impossible to decipher. But the more I knew you, the more I saw beyond the mask. I saw a man fighting to be better, a man capable of deep love, even if he was afraid to admit it. You challenged me. You made me question everything I thought I knew about myself, and in the process you made me discover courage I didn't know I had." She squeezed his hands. "Today, I promise to stand by your side, no matter what comes. I promise to challenge you when you need to be challenged. I promise to comfort you when you need comfort. And I promise to love you, not in spite of your past, but including it, because it made you who you are, and I love who you are." There wasn't a dry eye when they finished. Even Jeff had tears silently streaming down his face, tears he didn't try to hide. "By the power vested in me," the officiant said, smiling, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Jeff didn't need to be told twice. He pulled Brenda into his arms and kissed her. Not a shy ceremonial kiss, but a deep, passionate kiss that made it clear to everyone present how much they loved each other. The guests applauded, whistled, laughed, but Jeff and Brenda didn't even notice. They were completely lost in each other. Months turned into years. Life wasn't always perfect. There were arguments about small things: where to spend vacation, how to decorate the apartment, who forgot to buy milk. There were difficult days when Jeff's past threatened to return in small but painful ways. There were moments when Brenda questioned whether she'd made the right decision, but in each of those moments, they chose each other again. Jeff built a legitimate business, a security consulting firm that helped other companies protect themselves against the kind of betrayal he'd faced. It was ironic, but also appropriate. He was using his past to build a better future. Brenda continued in journalism, but now focused on redemption stories, people who had overcome difficult pasts to build meaningful lives. She even won an award for an investigative series on prison system reform. And in every achievement, in every challenge overcome, they were together. It was a Friday night 3 years after the wedding. They were home on the couch, watching a movie neither was really paying attention to. Brenda was nestled against Jeff's chest, her feet tucked under her, a glass of wine in hand. Jeff played absent-mindedly with her hair, winding and unwinding a strand around his fingers. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, looking up. He smiled, that soft, private smile he reserved only for her. "About how lucky I am." "Lucky?" She rolled her eyes affectionately. "You almost died to get here." "Exactly." He leaned down, kissing the top of her head, and it was worth every second. Brenda turned completely to face him, setting her wine glass aside. "Are you happy?" "I am." There was no hesitation. "Happier than I ever thought possible." "And you?" "Yes." She touched his face tenderly, tracing the line of his jaw. "Sometimes I still find myself thinking about how we got here, about all the choices we had to make, about all the risks." "Regrets?" "Never." She leaned in, kissing him softly. "Not for a second." He deepened the kiss, pulling her closer. Even after years together, there was still that spark, that electricity that made her heart race and his skin tingle. When they separated, both were smiling. "You know what I realized?" Jeff said, tucking her hair behind her ear, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. What? I still get nervous when I'm about to kiss you. Brenda laughed softly. After all this time. After all this time. He held her face with both hands. Because every kiss still feels like the first. Every time I touch you, I still feel that electric current. And every time you look at me that way. What way? Like I'm the most important thing in the world. His voice was loaded with emotion. I still can't believe I have you. You do. She placed her hands over his. Forever. Forever, he repeated, like a promise. And then he kissed her again, slow, deep, full of all the years they'd spent together and all the years still to come. Life continued to unfold. They traveled together, Paris, Tokyo, Buenos Aires. In each place, Jeff made a point of finding a private moment, away from the crowds, where he could kiss her under a different sky. They had candlelit dinners on their Friday nights, a tradition they never broke. And always, Jeff tucked her hair behind her ear before kissing her. Such a small gesture, but so theirs. At night, lying together in the bed they shared, they still looked at each other as if falling in love for the first time. Jeff still traced her face with his fingers in the darkness. Brenda still held his hand against her heart, letting him feel the rhythm that beat only for him. You know, Jeff whispered one night in the dark, I used to be afraid to sleep. Why? Because I was afraid that when I woke up, all of this would have been a dream. That you wouldn't be real. Brenda turned to face him, her eyes adjusting to the darkness until she could see the outline of his face. I'm real. I know. He pulled her closer. And I'll never stop being grateful for that. Years later, when they both had hair with silver strands and laugh lines that told stories of shared laughter, they still sat together on the balcony at sunset. Jeff still tucked Brenda's hair behind her ear before kissing her. Brenda still trembled when he whispered her name. And at night, lying together in the bed they'd shared for decades, they still looked at each other with the same wonder as the first day. You know what I learned? Brenda said one night, her head resting on his chest. What? That true love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about choosing someone imperfect and deciding to love them every day anyway. Jeff kissed the top of her head. And would you choose me again, knowing everything? Without hesitation, she replied immediately. And you? Every time, he murmured. In every life, in every universe. I would always choose you. And there in the comfortable silence of the night, wrapped in the certainty of decades of shared love, they understood the deepest truth. A cold man who surrendered completely. A strong woman who never gave up. Two hearts, now and forever, inseparable. Because true love doesn't end. It transforms, grows, deepens. And the kisses, those never end. Not when they're given with all your heart. Not when each one is a renewed promise. Not when each touch still carries the same magic as the first day. Endless kisses, eternal love, and living proof that even the impossible can become real. When two souls decide not to give up. There are stories that remind us that true love isn't born ready. It's built. Jeff was a man the world feared, imprisoned by a dark past. Brenda was a woman who dared to see him beyond the shadows. Together, they proved that surrender isn't weakness, but courage. That loving deeply, even in the face of danger, is the greatest victory. And that some kisses simply never end, because they carry the promise of a soul that has finally found its home. And you? Have you ever surrendered completely to someone? Have you ever loved in a way that transformed who you were? Maybe this story isn't just about Jeff and Brenda. Maybe it's also about us. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and become a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, also click the Super Thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue bringing stories that move hearts.